Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. Tonight we have a very special guest, the author of DNA of a Man, Mr. Matt Hallock. And we're really excited to have him. And I got my partner in crime right next to me, Mr. Dave Kemp. What's going on, brothers?
So thanks, Matt, a whole bunch for joining us. We're super excited to have you here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Like I said, I've been looking forward to it since we talked, and just hearing about what you guys are doing and where you've come from, and the demographic that you are looking to reach, and the message, man. I think it's a good mix that we've got going here, because you guys just have an awesome thing going, and I'm happy to be here to talk about whatever comes up. So
Awesome. Playing the same wheelhouse, so I'm excited. So we'll back up here just a little bit. So sometime about 8-10 months ago, it might have been Christmas time, I think my wife actually got me this book. And if you couldn't tell from the intro already, it's called The DNA of a Man. And this is kind of in the lane of what we talk about a lot on Righteous Savages, about masculinity and stepping up in your faith and not being afraid to talk about what you believe in. Everybody else gets to talk about what they believe in and force it down your throat on a daily basis. A lot of times with Christians, we're taught just to be the nice guy, don't say anything, and to some extent we are supposed to turn the other cheek and not let things bother us. But on the other hand, we cannot be afraid to stand up for what we believe in, and not just to win an argument, but to inspire other men to jump up and figure out what their mission in life is. So sometime about Christmas time, I got this book and jumped into it. I think, Matt, I told you I read this on an airplane on a trip to Florida or something, and read it in just a couple hours, just cruised through it. And first of all, I was pleasantly surprised how well written the book was. And I was impressed with just how good of a writer you were. And so it just kept me hooked and intrigued. And it really spoke to a lot of things in my life that I was going through. Any man out there who's married, this book will speak to you 100%, no doubt about it. Read it on a plane on the way to Florida. I didn't have a pen or a highlighter, and I thought, man, there's a lot of good stuff. I was just dog-earing the pages here and there. So I got back home with the highlighter and read it again, and really marked up the whole book of things I thought were really important and cool. And then I read it a third time. I don't think I've ever read any of the books I've ever read them 3 times. Hey, man, congratulations. I made an impact. And for somebody, I've been a cop, or was a cop, for 29 years. Read a lot of stuff over my career. It's very hard to impress cops with anything, with books, whatever. So you did a great job with me, man. And we'll say, obviously, we're here to promote this book and promote it to everybody in our sphere of influence. So hopefully we can do that by the end of the show. And so I appreciate you for that. So I want to give everybody a little background, or have you give everybody a little background about, kind of just go back to the beginning. Where are you from, and kind of what was the beginning of your church or faith experience life growing up? Was it as a kid, as an adult? Kind of how did that end up evolving?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the glowing reviews on the book, by the way. I should probably make a 3X Dave Kemp award to put on my mantle or something like that, to show that it got read 3 times.
Black.
So but where did I begin? So back when I was 3, my parents got divorced. I was raised by a Christian mom, and my dad was very much not. I won't go into all of the gruesome details there, but my dad, he is a high functioning addict. He, alcohol, drugs, and stuff like that. But he was also a very successful veterinarian, legendary in the world of veterinarians on the West Coast, basically. So it was an odd thing to know what was true behind the scenes, but the rest of the world, never saw some of the stuff from him that I did. So when I was young and my parents had just been recently divorced, I started going back and forth between both of their houses. I I became a Christian at the age of 4. And, you know, some people might be like, well, was it real? How much did you really understand? Blah, blah, blah. All I know is that I was as Christian as I could be at 4 years old. And honestly, I don't remember a time in my life that I didn't want to know Jesus more, even as a little kid. Um, when I became when I went into middle school in 6th grade, it was a big turning point for me because I had been visiting my dad like regularly. He even moved from a like several hours away. He moved into the same town as my mom was living in so that he could be close to my sister and I. And so, he was also a pretty good dad. Aside from his other stuff, he would tell me he loved me. I know a lot of guys never got anything like that from their dads. He would spend time with us, like playing games with us. He would take me out to the baseball field. He taught me that I sucked in the outfield, but I was incredible in the infield. So I always had wanted to be an outfielder because Barry Bonds was my favorite player as a kid growing up in California. And then he helped me realize, no, infield is where you're at. Uh, but in 6th grade, there was an event where there was just a lot of like there's a lot of dangerous stuff that went on because of him having been drinking and stuff. He drove us while he was drunk. He and my stepmom had some altercations and stuff, and my sister and I were shell shocked. We were scared for our lives and everything like that. And so when that all went down, we ended up stopping seeing him, and he we wrote a letter to him saying, Dad, we would love it if you would change, if you would stop. We really love you, but that was scary. We can't do that, and he ended up writing us a letter back saying, you have no idea how it feels to have your kids reject you. And I can't believe you guys would do that. We moved all the way down here to be with you, and now you don't even want to see me. Like he flipped it all back on us. And so all of that happened, and I never saw him all through middle school or high school. I lost connection with my dad, and I didn't know what it meant to become a man during those most formative years. And so during that time, I sought Jesus hard because I knew that I needed more than words on a page. I needed to have a dad, and he talks of like he's a father, and so I needed that to actually be true. So I wasn't happy. I was never not that I wasn't happy, but I was never content with just going to church and doing the Sunday school youth group thing and then whatever. I wasn't even content with like reading the Bible and praying. I needed to have him contribute back to me in the relationship. I needed to know there was a real entity there. And it was, there were different times along the way through middle and high school when God really like showed up in different ways, but there was one night in particular. I was in my room, like as I often did in my room reading. I was in the Bible and a journal. A lot of my journals in those days were like the angsty teenager, right? Life is so hard, everything sucks. God, where are you? There's a lot of that stuff. But so I was reading Isaiah, and it was Isaiah. I know I could find it. It's like Isaiah 63 or 4. It says, one of the verses there says, "Yet, O Lord, you are our Father. You're the potter, and we are the clay, and we're all the work of your hands." And I read that, and it was the first time I'd ever experienced this thing where like the Bible is no longer just the Bible in that moment. It was like God had entered the room, and I started weeping, just uncontrollably crying. And it felt like I was getting a hug from a dad that I hadn't had for, 6-7 years, whatever it was. And that was absolutely life-changing. And that whole thing of I need you to be real to me has shaped my whole faith from my entire life. That's always been what I need, because I've never been excited to just like do church. I've always been like, yeah, I'll go to church. I want to invest in people. I want to love the community, but it's got to be more. So it when I then got into college, and actually right before college, so my wife and I met in high school. We were the two chaplains of our senior class at our Christian high school. And so we were involved like in planning a bunch of chapels. We both spoke in chapel. We endured persecution from Christians as chaplains. We went through a lot of weird stuff, in that time. But we basically became really good friends, started dating at the end of senior year. Rest is history. We got married before we finished college. But during that time, I stumbled into pornography, and that like was such this weird dynamic to be doing that while the chaplain, and I was the poster child for Jesus boy. Like I was, all the teachers' favorite. I was the most likely to succeed. I was homecoming king, even, I was all of that. And then I had this thing that I was just so ashamed of. And I began to because of that, I began to really like wrestle with, does God still love me? Am I still okay? Can he still use me? I don't want this thing, but it's here right now. And I really like, there was a season in college where I really entered into a ton of self-hatred because of it. And I've sensed God wanting me to come to like tell who was then my fiance about it. He said, you can't build a foundation on a marriage on a shaky foundation. She's got to know like what you've dealt with and everything. And I was just so scared and ashamed to talk to her. And so I was then, because I was so afraid of this and I wasn't following through with it, then I started to judge myself and condemn myself, and like God could never use me because I can't do this. And so I started to really like have some really just deeply dark thoughts of I just hated who I was. And around that same time, I started developing the physical disease that I've been dealing with now for many years, for like 17, 18 years. It was back in 2007 when it started. And it started in that time of a lot of self-hatred, which I don't think is an accident, because it's autoimmune, which is your body attacking itself. And here I was attacking myself in a spiritual way. And so that whole thing, I got through all that. I talked to my wife. I told her what I had done and everything. And man, there was just so much release and freedom when I did that. And I don't really understand what it's like to go through a long, like, walkout process of pornography, because for me, it was like an immediate freedom when I followed through with that. In fact, I had begun finding freedom even a little bit before I told her. But so all that was resolved, but my body continued to deteriorate. And so over the years, since 2007, I got to the point where I was bedridden. I couldn't get out of bed except to go to the bathroom. It would take me, 15 minutes to walk from the bedroom to the car to go to a doctor's appointment because I was in so much pain. And a lot of my faith was tested through all that. Now I know I'm starting to get into like adulthood and stuff. You're asking me where it all began, but I don't want to ramble too long if you guys have more to talk through and ask about all that before I just keep going. But
one of the questions I have for later, but I'll ask you now. In the books and just now, you kind of left the health issue that you're dealing with a little bit vague, like didn't name it specifically. Is there a reason?
No, there's no reason other than the point was the reader. And so I didn't see in that, in the message and the chapters that came through when I was putting that book together, it just didn't seem necessary. It felt like the book could achieve its goal without that. But I'm an open book when it comes to that. In fact, I do believe that it'll become more a part of the story when I put out the next book, The DNA of a Warrior. But yeah, nothing in particular, like personal, that caused me to leave it out.
Right. Yeah, well, that's, it's amazing how our relationships with people have such a huge impact. How the relationship with your father had a huge impact in your life, or the lack of that relationship. And so, I mean, you can't really control a lot of that stuff, but I think the inspiration behind this is that, we can have an impact on other people in such a positive way. We did, I retired last year. I still work at the Carbondale Police Department. We had some training over the last couple of days where part of the training involved some of our police officers talking to the class about, number one, why did you want to be a police officer? And number two, tell us an incident during your career where you had a positive impact on somebody else. Man, after listening to about 40 cops tell these stories, it was just unbelievable how just small little things that the officers had done had such a huge, major impact on the future. We had one girl in this class, a police officer, say that she had gone to a domestic one night, and the male half of that domestic got arrested. The officer just kind of connected really well with the victim, and the victim trusted her and appreciated everything she did. And a couple weeks later, the victim called back and said, "Hey, you were so nice to me and I trust you so much. I'm going to give you some information about my boyfriend. He's a pedophile and he's got child pornography and he's trying to kidnap another family member's 1-year-old here to run off." And so they ended up arresting this guy, charging him. He got 90 years in prison. And it was all because this officer just was kind of nice to somebody. That was it. It wasn't, she didn't save the day. It was just one little 10-minute interaction saved the lives of a couple of kids, or probably dozens of kids. It's just amazing. So it's so cool to hear, how you are now impacting people in such a strong way. So
yeah, and I wanted to kind of follow up on something you were talking about, because it's something that's been pretty at the forefront of my thinking here recently, is that I always talk about mothers and fathers and how that's such a needed thing, but for different reasons in children's lives. I think for a mother, it's that early childhood development and teaching children what it means to feel loved and nurtured and safe and all of that. But when we get into the teenage years, formative years, both girls and boys need their dad.
Yeah.
Their dad, a boy needs his dad to teach him how to be a man, and a girl needs her dad to teach her what kind of a man to look for.
Yeah.
And you obviously had a kind of a broken relationship there in those years, but you leaned into your faith, and even with some of the issues that came out of your life, you still leaned into your faith in that. And so how would you express that to people? Because we have a lot of teenagers, a lot of young, early 20s that did not have a real dad, or maybe a substitute dad or something like that. What would you say to them to give them some sort of encouragement in how do we navigate that?
So that's a great question. And I think I would probably give both encouragement and also ever so slight kick in the pants at the same time. The encouragement being what's probably, a fairly commonly communicated thing, at least in the church world. Yeah, it is very sad and heartbreaking you didn't have your dad around. You do have a father nonetheless who absolutely adores you, and what your dad communicated or failed to communicate really has nothing to do with what the father is constantly communicating to you every day of your life. And so there is that encouragement there that your identity, it doesn't depend on your dad. It depends on who you were created to be. And so the kick in the pants part of it comes from we do have to be free to process what we need to process. We have to be free to feel what we need to feel. But I also can't carry the label of fatherlessness with me for the rest of my life. I can't carry this identity of a kid without a dad. Otherwise, I'm a victim. And scripture says that Jesus leads us always in triumph. Doesn't just say when you have a father who did well. It doesn't just say, he leads you in triumph sometimes in your life and not others. It says always. And so the fact that we don't have that father, and I'll tell you, even today, I find myself like, man, it would be so nice if I had a dad that I could call up right now, because I'm going through some hard stuff, and I wish he was there to teach me how to find success in business. I wish he was there to teach me how to navigate stuff in my marriage. And you know what? Quite frankly, it sucks that he wasn't. I mean, I have those times and days, but even so, we have to choose, but I'm not going to let it define me, and I will rise above and overcome anyway, because Romans 8:37 says we're more than conquerors through him who loves us. And so I'm going to conquer the fatherlessness in my own life so that I can become a father to others. So I think that there's the consolation. It's okay. You do belong. You have a dad, even if it's not that dad, you have a dad. And he can be found by you. If you seek him with all your heart, you're going to find him. But also, you're made for more. Don't let this keep you down, because that's a lie from Satan that says that now you're broken because of it.
Yeah, finding your true identity is a huge part of your book and what you talk about. And you go back to your life as a kid playing baseball a lot. You thought that was going to be your identity, and didn't really end up working out so well. All of a sudden, you probably figured out you weren't going to be Barry Bonds. And a lot of kids are invested so much, that could be crushing. And you come to a big crossroads of man, and we see kids these days playing sports and doing these travel teams and these extra teams, and parents spending just all kinds of money, and all their kids do 4 till 18 is 12 sports teams a year.
Yeah.
And then, you're going to get a scholarship, and you're going to go to school. And next thing you know, kids nah, I'm not want to do this anymore. And the parents what do you mean?
Yeah.
It's what we've been trying to do your whole life. And it's nah, it's not me. And so, how the baseball side of things for you end up helping you realize that maybe your identity needs to be somewhere else?
Yeah. It's funny because I think baseball, when I was a kid, it was the dream of mine to, basically be the next Barry Bonds. And when high school came around, and I just never played at the level that, anywhere close to the level you'd need to play at to make it pro, let alone major leagues. I'll be honest, man, I did not have a great attitude during the seasons. And I talk about this a bit in my book, but I psyched myself out so much. I cared so much that I would play well that I actually hated game days, because there was so much pressure that I put on myself. I wanted the games to be rained out. I didn't want to have to do it because I was so nervous. And if I didn't play well, strike out, whatever it is, I mean, I was one of those guys who'd throw his helmet in the dugout, all that stuff. And I didn't understand what I do now. I did have that in conjunction with my continuous pursuit of Jesus as well. And so there was that part of my life where I was actively finding my identity in him, but I just was still young and immature, and I didn't have the full understanding of how unhealthy all that was yet. I would say from baseball, I kind of didn't really get the lesson even when I was done playing, because I think what ended up happening in a way is I transferred that looking for my identity from baseball to my wife, who was at first my girlfriend and my fiance and stuff. Because she, like I said, she and I started dating right at the end of senior year. Baseball's done. There she is. And man, you know how it is. Like, you got a hot woman right there in front of you. You want her to just want you all the time. You want to do whatever it takes to keep her happy and to keep her attention on you. And so, yeah, I mean, I just went right from one unhealthy looking for my identity to the next. And it really wasn't until, marriage stuff started hitting the fan that I was like, okay, started putting the pieces together and learning where all these unhealthy pursuits, like how they had all been going on over the years.
Yeah, man. It's things in this book started to click when you started talking about that relationship that a lot of men have with their wives. On page 29 of your book here, it says that you said this. You said it's vital to your ability to thrive that you have this understanding of your identity outside of any other person, especially the most important person in your life, your wife. You say, we should be a man living on a mission from God, not on a mission of approval.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, so finally somebody, the wordsmith, Matt Hallock, has finally started to put some words together. And I'd never heard that in church before.
Yeah.
They've definitely never heard that. And it's not like the book is not saying don't love your wife, but it's like this mission for men, the mission that we're supposed to be on, especially a godly mission. To me, that is what it resonates my inner core, my being. Like, that is what it's like just not just a spiritual thing, but it's just a molecular part of my DNA of like, man, I want to battle. I want to be a warrior. I want to be on a mission, especially a mission for the God of the universe. Like, yes, sign me up. Let's do this.
And I think the church really, like, we don't get past the whole, hey, submit, and, wives submit to your husbands and husbands love your wives. We never talk about, what that actually means and what male headship is. Headship is not the man being the domineering tyrant. I actually think you said this in your latest podcast episode. Spoiler alert. That we are actually supposed to be leading as we follow Christ, not domineering tyrants. As far as, we always hear that message. And as a guy, it's like, oh, she has to submit to me. That means she has to have sex with me every night. That's
good luck. Good luck with that.
That's a recipe for disaster. But that is not explained well in the church now at all. And that's, I think, why we see, we're not quite to where the world is on divorce rights. If you look at first-time marriages and stuff like that, but we're too close to actually. We're too close for comfort. We shouldn't be that close as children of God. We should be understanding what the Bible's actually teaching us about that relationship.
100%, man. Yeah. You're right. I had never heard anything like the quote that you read, Dave, from the church ever. I'd never heard it in a Christian marriage book. And we were going through hard times. And I was reading Christian marriage books, like looking for something. And I honestly, and I'm not trying to bash others out there. I mean, I'm just, from my experience, there was a couple of things I found that were helpful, but nothing that gave the full understanding that I needed. And yeah, like what you were saying about, either like submit, have sex with me every night, whatever. We in the church, we have one of two options. It seems it's either that way that gets, preached in different circles, or it's the go to the ultra, like you're always being nice and polite and acquiescing, right? And if you have desires, if you do anything about them, that's probably selfish because Jesus laid down his life. So you shouldn't do anything about your desires. It's not about you. And that's not helpful either. Right. So there's just such this void of like where the true truth actually lies in all of that. And I've discovered that, like, yeah, you can try to walk that path of the healthy marriage where it's neither of those two extremes, where your desires are actually mattering and you can actually work your marriage towards more sex if that's what you're wanting without dominating your wife and all of that stuff. That's possible to do, but it's very, I would almost say, impossible if you don't have an identity that's apart from your wife. And so you kind of have to do your own personal work before you do the marriage work.
Yep. That's cool, man. Things really started clicking out. And on a side note, I was wondering, if this book connects and resonates so good with men, and I don't know if your wife is a writer, but could there be a DNA of a woman book?
I love it, man. I've actually had women email me or send me like Facebook messages asking if that is the case too, because like your wife, like a lot of wives buy this book and then they discover, man, I want something like this. My wife is a writer. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Should my wife read this book? Do most wives read it and think, oh, he's telling these people to keep their identity away from me and not focus on me, or has the reaction been, no, this makes what I've been looking for also?
I tell you, man, when I first started putting it out there, I was basically expecting a bunch of angry women to get in touch with me about it because of that. Like, I was just assumed like, hey, you're trying to tell my husband that I don't matter. I don't think I've ever, I'm not exaggerating. I don't think I've ever gotten that kind of a feedback from a woman. I think all the women have been like, finally, somebody who gets it. I wish my husband would read this, basically, is what I've heard so many times.
I have a deep belief that, God made us to naturally crave, women to naturally crave masculinity and men to naturally crave real femininity, not femininity. And, masculinity is a multi-layered thing. It's not something that's just the 1980s, hulking roid rage, action star, but it's also not the dude on the corner with the latte playing his guitar. And I like latte, but that's for another episode. But it's not. It's somewhere in between. It's much more deep than what culture and society is trying to make masculinity. And I think that really women, and we've seen this too, when we start talking about the stuff we've been doing and we hear wives are like, yeah, I need to get my husband in on that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's women are wanting to see their men step into those masculine roles, the masculinity, biblical masculinity, that really actually is the one that she can say, I can follow this.
Yeah.
Because it's of God.
Yeah. You say in the book that the women, I think maybe you quoted another author, somebody said that women don't want to be the adventure. They want to be part of the adventure.
Yeah.
They don't want to necessarily be the focus. They want to be involved in the big picture, and they want, the man that's capable of leadership and taking charge and making decisions, and they're ready to follow that.
Yeah, it's right. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure I was referencing John Eldredge with that, because he talks about inviting the beauty into your adventure with you and everything. And I would say he was instrumental, by the way, in he actually, not in real life, but through his book Wild at Heart, he helped father me in high school. I read that in high school and it resonated with me since then. But yeah, our wives you're right. I think they're hardwired to be drawn to a man who is secure in himself and who walks in confidence, who looks out at the world and says, yeah, it's kind of a scary place, but I'm not It's no big deal to me. We've got this. They're wired for that. And what's odd and interesting is that when a marriage is in a place that's unhealthy in this way, there's other versions of unhealth, but the version of unhealthy that that most of the guys that resonate with the message that work with me or whatever uh experience, where the man has been the nice guy for too long and he's always just trying to people please his wife so that he can get more from her, usually sex and affection. um when that's the case, wives often step into a more masculine energy. They become a bit harder. They become a bit more cold and distant, angry, critical. They may not even know that they're craving this other version of their husband. And so a lot of times when husbands go through the transformation process, their wives actually like kind of a little bit freak out. They kind of throw some resistance into the mix there because they're not sure what's happening. They figured out how to be safe and take care of themselves this way. But when a man does make that change and he can push through that resistance, he can learn how to walk the line of like confidence and honoring of his own worth, and also honoring his wife even when she doesn't like him very much. Then he can start to see some fruit of, oh, here comes her femininity. Wow, it's been a long time since I've seen that. And that's incredible because she was always made to be more in that energy anyway. But
Yeah, for
but when we're not in ours, then she's got to help herself out.
Yeah. So we started talking about finding our true identity, our godly identity, as a son of God. God is our father. And we realized potential, like, holy smokes, the master of the universe is our dad, essentially. And we've got that connection. We start to figure out mission. And I think through your health journey and point, you realized or figured out that part of your mission was actually something very specific. Sometimes we talk about just very generalized thing. There's not really an action plan, but you decided at some point, you know what? I think I'm going to start praying for healing for people. Yeah. And I'm very specific with that. So tell us kind of how you came to that realization, and like that's going to be part of one of your main missions.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I've got this funny little like grab bag of different passions and missions. But so obviously, as we referenced at the earlier on, started having health issues, and the health battle, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. It opened my eyes to the fact that the medical world doesn't know as much as maybe many of us thought they did. It opened my eyes to some of the church mindsets that many of us have inherited. And I don't know that it's any one person's fault that we have. It's just the way that it's come about. And so as I was going through that season of bedriddenness, I had in my head this mindset that says, whatever happens in your life is part of God's plan. So by then, to extrapolate into disease, if you are sick, that's God's plan for you. Because and I understand the notion of like, well, he's God. I mean, he knows everything, he can do anything. So there's this idea that he's controlling all of it and he's writing it into your story. And when many of the people who believe that way and who even teach that way from pulpits don't deal with a lifelong chronic disease that has almost killed you. And when you're in this place where, like, I can think, man, that season of my life it was so dark. And I can think back to times when I couldn't hardly walk, so if we had to go out somewhere, I'd be sitting in our car in the passenger seat because I couldn't drive us. My wife would drive us around everywhere. And I'd watch out the window while she went into a store, and I'd watch husbands leaving stores with their wives, walking like normal, having muscles, holding their kids that I couldn't hold. And I was like, so am I supposed to believe that this is God's plan for me, that he has actually decided that me not being able to do a simple daily life like that is actually good? Am I supposed to believe that? And that if, we can pray to be healed, but if we're not getting healed, then God just must have a different plan. Or there's also the like, well, we have to, we can ask for it, but it is really all in his timing. And so I was wrestling with those things because I was like, God, if this is true, I don't like you at all. Like, I don't know that I want to do this with you. This is horrible. And so I was in bed and I opened up my laptop and I went to Bible Gateway to just start searching for everything that I could find about sickness and healing in scripture. And I looked up everything there is to look up about it. And the only stuff I found was that God heals the sick. You can lay your hands on the sick and they'll recover. Psalm 103 says the Lord heals all my diseases, right there in parallel with forgiving all my iniquities. Isaiah 53, the prophecy about Jesus, it's so, I don't think this was an accident. The Hebrew words for he carried our what is it? I always say the accurate Hebrew now. So he bore our sorrows and carried our infirmities or something like that. The Hebrew words are he bore our sicknesses and carried our physical pains. Right there in the atonement chapter. And I started seeing these things and I was like, God, I think I've been taught and I've been believing wrongly. Your word does not say that you use sickness to teach us lessons. Your word does not say that you have your will for some people to be forever chronically diseased and others not. It says that through Jesus, you want sickness out of here. And I was like, I can get on board with that. I have a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know why I'm sick if you don't want me sick, but I'm going to, by an act of my will, I'm going to choose to believe what you're saying here. And I'm going to step away from what I've been taught my whole life by the Christian world. And when I started believing that way, even though my body was full of pain, and even though it wasn't like, whoa, all of a sudden this angel walked into the room and smacked me in the face and I'm healed now. There was nothing like that. But when I started believing that way, I gradually found some strength. I was also going to doctors. I gradually started being able to get out of bed. I started being able to walk with a cane, started being able to like do life. And I was like, I don't know yet how to continue on the journey of faith in a way where my body's going to start getting better and better from where it is right now. But here's what I do know. If I see sickness in somebody else, I think I should probably act like I believe it, like what you guys talk about. I should live what I say I'm believing now. So, and I believe this is in my book. I may be wrong. So there's a kid in my book where I talk about giving him a word from the Lord about him not being like his father, and he had been an alcoholic as a high schooler. That same kid was also the first healing miracle I ever saw on a different occasion. I was tutoring him in math, and he came into the Starbucks where we were meeting in California, where I lived at the time. And he sits down at the table across from me. He's like, Matt, I don't think I can focus on math today. I'm like, what's going on, man? Why not? He said, I just came from basketball practice and I was going up for a rebound. And this other guy came down from getting the rebound and his elbow hit me right on the top of my head. And we just had the momentum, going opposite directions and everything like that. And he said, I've got blurry vision. I'm nauseous. I can't I've got a splitting headache. And I'd never prayed for anybody to be healed before. And so I was sitting there and I was, was in an inner battle. I was like, man, I'm so nervous to do this right now. Because first of all, I need the money. I don't want his mom to fire me because now she didn't know she hired this whack job to work with her son. But then I was like, but what kind of man do I want to be? I don't want to be the man who runs because I'm afraid. I want to step out and do what I say I believe. And so I did it. I was like, hey, his name was Matt too. I was like, hey, Matt, is it all right if I pray for you? This might sound crazy, but I want to do that. And he was like, okay. High schooler, like the high school guy's not going to give you a whole lot, of emotion there. So I reached out my hand. I didn't touch him. I didn't want to make it a scene, make it awkward, but I just put my hand towards him. I said, kept it short and sweet. In the name of Jesus, I command this to be gone, be healed. And I asked him, do you feel anything? He said, no, I didn't feel anything. So I said, well, can I try again? And he was like, okay. So I did it again. I didn't change anything. I didn't try to like put together better words. Just did the same thing over again. And I finished and I said, all right, man, you feel anything? And he said, yeah. He said, that second time you were praying for me, I felt this cold, like liquid, like it was pouring into my head. And he said, as you were finishing praying, that cold liquid, I could feel it like draining out. And as it was draining, all the symptoms left. I'm fine. I see straight. I don't have a headache. I'm not nauseous. And he was like, I think we could probably work on math now. And that it was incredible. But the reason I tell that story is because it's really down to earth. It's not that I'm anything special with it. It's that I think I had a stronger than normal motive to believe that healing is legitimate because I needed it for myself. So I was desperate for it. But there was no like all of a sudden, like I said, the angel come in and saying, hey, Matt, by the way, you also have a gift of healing. There was none of that. It was just, oh, Jesus said everybody could do this. So I need to muster the courage to obey him and see if I get any results. And if not, I'm going to do it again because he still told me to do it anyway. So I still need to obey. Yeah. So that's kind of how it all began.
That's awesome. That's kind of where when I was in high school, I was in an algebra class one day. I was like a junior in high school, had a splitting migraine. I started getting migraines. I never felt pain like this in my life. And I sat there in math class one day with my eyes closed, praying that this headache would go away. And it felt like somebody had taken, kind of opened my skull and had a garden hose with like 50-degree water pouring onto my brain and going down like into my spinal cord, and all the pain.
That's incredible. How similar is that? That's crazy.
Is that, bro, that you're telling a story and like something almost identical.
Yeah.
Me in a math class, with a migraine. I'm like, well, maybe there's something to this. It's like cold water. It's the Holy Spirit or something to run a dominate this life. Yeah. How wild is that, man? So it's so cool and inspiring to hear like stuff like that. There's there's a psychologist. I heard about this guy through a law enforcement training. His name is Howard Gardner. I don't really know too much about this guy, but he said that this kind of his famous quote was that 80% of your motivation to do anything comes from your expectation of what you think the result is going to be.
Wow.
If you think something is not going to be successful, you probably not going to do it. But if for some reason you're confident that you're going to succeed, it's going to work, you're going to do that thing. And that quote is stuck for a long time. And so, we just could change our mindset, just like, hey, scripture, like, what do we believe in? Like, what are we doing here? We all call ourselves a Christian and we believe in God. But, I mean, do you?
Yeah.
If you do, but man, maybe we need to be thinking and acting differently and have the confidence like Matt Hallock to be like, you know what? I don't care how weird this is. I've got a God that says he's going to do it, and we probably had better be doing this stuff. And so, man, off to you, brother. That is That is so cool. You on your website and with kind of your business and kind of what you got going on, you call yourself a coach.
Yeah.
But do you think of yourself as like a counselor? We could put a bunch of tags on you. We could call you a marriage counselor. We could call you, a bunch of different things. But is there a way to describe kind of what you're doing now with podcasts with us and your book and all your stuff? How would you describe kind of what you're doing?
It's a fantastic question. I mean, I think coach is a decent way to describe it. I also, I feel like I pastor guys, even though it's not in a church setting, I'm not on staff at any churches or anything like that. But really, because when you think of a pastor, ideally that pastor is influencing multiple areas of your life. Right. And so, yeah, there's the marriage, marriage counsel, coaching. But so often, much of guys stepping into that place of masculine confidence, we go on a journey like, so who does the Lord tell you to be? What do you find is available to you in Scripture? A lot of times it becomes like, hey, you know what? I do kind of want to step out in my faith more. I think it'd be crazy to start to see miracles happen. I love all that. So much of it, like, it all comes into the picture. Yeah, I don't know. I still don't like the word pastor though, because it carries so many connotations. So coach is where I'm at for now, plus author, plus podcaster. Maybe someday we could say movement maker, but at the moment I'm not going there yet, but it's, that's the whole goal, as you guys are looking to build movements as well. So
yeah, very righteous savage too. So yeah, for sure.
I love that name, by the way.
That's his brainchild.
It's a brilliant name. I was like, oh, they're so lucky they thought of that.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, we're sold that for a while, man. We just thought it was really fitting and kind of described kind of the duality of kind of, especially men, how we're built. We need to love as hard as we possibly can our families and our kids and be emotional and vulnerable and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, if somebody's trying to hurt my family, there's going to be some savage stuff going on, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Dude, absolutely.
Shouldn't be, aimed of it. I do kind of like titles. I've talked to a lot of guys over the years about in 2024, like, what do we call, I grew up, I graduated high school in 1989 and I went to a Baptist church at first. And then, the thing was in the early 90s, like, okay, everything's going non-denominational. It's like, okay, well, people kind of have an idea that you're not Catholic, that you're not some of these other things, but like, what are you? And I'm always not struggling in the right word, but I'm like, I almost feel like we need a name for kind of what we believe in.
Yeah.
These, as far as kind of the core beliefs of, the Trinity and all of the Bible is real and just what you could come up with a list of 40 things, but I find it hard to describe the type of Christianity, born again Christian, that kind of, I grew up, I didn't start going to church till I was 17 years old. Never within church at all. So anything, even the word Jesus is still in my life reminds me of churchy stuff. I still have to battle that. And, words like sin and demons is like, this always had like just weird churchy vibes to it. So I don't know, I'm going off on a rant, but I need to trademark a name for kind of, the ends of 2024. Like, who are we? Not to put us in a box, to kind of, I don't know, maybe help people understand a little bit where we're coming.
And kind of building off of that, I think that you're seeing this emergence of the church where there are two different sides of the church and they're going in two different directions right now. You're seeing a lot of this kind of organizational top part of the church is kind of trying to go more towards like the world, to be inclusive, to feel like they need to they need to reach out, that they need to somehow church up the gospel in some way to be able to reach more people. And we know that's not the case because the gospel is a perfect message. We just have to be willing to deliver it.
Yeah.
But where do you see the church's biggest failure when it comes to, right now, when it comes to the message of masculinity and how we equip men in a world that's actually kind of very against masculinity?
Yeah, before you answer that, so kind of go along with that. So I got a quote here from page 130 of Matt Hallock's book, DNA of a Man. Says, for long, our culture has robbed us of the epic adventure that is Christianity by telling us that these things aren't for today, that we are being presumptuous and arrogant to think that we could heal anybody, to operate by the leading of the Holy Spirit and confront demons when they show up. Instead, we've inoculated ourselves with a watered-down, doctrine-centric body of head knowledge. Like, man, that kind of...
We know all the theology, but we don't know how to apply it anywhere.
Yeah. Man, I do like that quote. that says it. That says what I think pretty well. But
getting on the first thing I asked Matt was like, bro, did you really write this book? You're not a ghostwriter somewhere, because this is good. This is good stuff. But we do see, there is a slight, feeling tendency, I think, in a lot of churches, not all of them, but, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff and we're going to get out of here and we'll see you next Sunday and go.
Yeah, no, it's such a good question and topic. And I have found myself over these last 4 years since I got into this and started selling the book, I've found myself coming to new levels of awareness all the time about, wow, I don't think that church mentality is helpful either. I don't think that one's helpful. And it's quite a few. So as far as like where we have kind of dropped the ball in helping men to become men, I think it's, gosh, I don't know if I can answer in one failure, but I think it's first of all, there is an overwhelming lack of faith in the word for what it just says. And so there's been so much traditions of men that have been perpetrated by the church that have superseded what God actually says. And so, for example, the idea that the gifts of the Spirit passed away long ago, right? That's not scriptural at all. You can't even come close to convincing me that there's anything related to that in scripture. And yet it's characterized for a long time, the majority of the American church. Now, thankfully, I think it's starting to change more. But that's just one of many. So I think that dynamic is at the root of a lot. And I honestly think Satan has had a lot to do with the misleading of the church in this way. I mean, I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh yeah, you believe that way, like that, the Holy Spirit isn't that active. You don't believe in all those things. I do believe it. But you know what? Let's work together and join forces and go conquer the world. I'm not like that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to actually join with that doctrine because it's from hell. And if there's people drowning in the world, I'm not going to partner with somebody who's like, we can't do anything about it. I'm only going to partner with people who are like, no, we have plenty of tools to go in and save them. So I'm not like a big unity guy. I'm a big get on mission guy, and whoever's on the mission will get unified. But as far as failure for men, I do think that I would say marriage related is massive. We have not equipped men to know how to create passion in their marriages. We have helped men become more nice and polite. We have decreased the polarity between masculine and feminine so that both sides are just supposed to be really loving and kind to each other. And when you decrease the polarity, it's like in a rubber band. If there's nothing pulling the rubber band apart, there's no tension that's drawing those two together. And so we've created this culture where men and women are both supposed to just become like each other and be amazing Christians and have a great marriage. But there's no, now that rubber band is just sitting there slack. So I think we've done a bad job at promoting actually just the joys of sex. The topic of sex is usually about purity. When we don't have anything about like, dude, you and your wife can get it on and it can be amazing. And here's how you do that if you're at a place where you're not talking to each other. So I think we've massively dropped the ball there. My wife would say the same thing. Like she and I both are like, golly, we need a different conversation about that topic.
That rubber band analogy is awesome.
Yeah, no. It's actually biblical too, because when God first, if you actually go back to the original translation, I think it's Ezer Kenegdo, mate.
Yeah.
Original Hebrew word, and it literally means a helper against you. So there, the connotation is that this is actually a tension.
Wow.
That you got opposite polarities, and
that's
that you
cool.
you pull against each other, but you make each other better by that tension.
In your next book, you can quote John Whedon for the scripture reference to the rubber band analogy.
I know, totally. I was never aware of that. That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is so. And so Matt, so aside from all your business ventures, helping men to become men, outside of your wife and your family and your church, like, is there anything like other things that you're good at, like hobbies, like for me and John, we're both kind of the same way. Like if somebody turns on a barbecue smoker, dude, you better look out, because there's some mean cooking about to happen and go down. Whether it's pork shoulders, we do that a lot of our trainings. I think I told you about this the other day. We have a class coming up in September called the Warrior Weekend, and we spend a lot of time shooting guns and training and doing some medical training, and then we do a lot of time
making barbecues and
with meat on the grill. And so what else kind of drives you as far as projects or hobbies or that type of thing?
Yeah. First of all, I got to say, I don't know why you didn't invite me over for this podcast episode so we could have some of that smoked meat that you got on there. I'll have to head up there sometime, but yeah. So I will say I've never become a connoisseur of barbecue and smoke and stuff, but man, you give me a tri-tip, I will grill that thing so fast. And man, that's my favorite. So,
I heard a lot of California people talk about tri-tips. I mean, it's a tech. I've heard of it. We got a buddy of ours, Chuck, that he's like, that's all he talked about. Like, pouring tri-tips, man, you got to do this. I'm like, well, all right.
But to me, it's brisket. I just smoke it with the brisket,
Yeah.
No, so if you ever get your hands on a tri-tip, I know it's weird. They originated, as what the rumor has it, in a town that was like 40 minutes from where I went to college, but that cut of meat was like found its birth. But if you get your hands on one, in my opinion, the best way to cook it is high and fast, so it gets crispy on the outside, it just has it, and it's not that expensive of a cut, and it has a flavor that's to die for. So I would have to agree with your friend. But as far as the hobbies and stuff go, so that is something that kind of fell away in the health journey. I used to do a ton of working out, which I'm doing now again. Not at the level I was doing before, but I'm doing it because I refuse to lose. So I'm not going to just sit by and, whatever. So I used to do that. I used to be really active, like going on runs and stuff too, playing sports and things. I used to fish quite a bit as well. fishing was big for me growing up. I connected with the Lord out there on those mountain streams in the Sierra Nevadas a lot. Um,
Yeah, it's all.
when the sickness happened, a lot of that just stopped. So right now, I've actually we're in like a rebuilding phase from 15 years of not knowing what was coming next. So by rebuilding its business, by rebuilding its we purchased our first home that we actually owned a few years ago, and it was a fixer upper. So a lot of my hobbies are home improvement projects right now, and my wife is a gardener, but she submits her drawings to me to please build for her, so there's those kinds of things. I built our chicken coop that we have. We have what do we have now? 7 chickens and 5 ducks. But there's a lot of that stuff. My daughters just bought me, it was for Father's Day. They just bought us all a set of fishing rods. So we now have to get back into that. And I've never taken them fishing yet. So this is a big deal that we got to do. I have done shooting in the past. I've never gotten fully into it, largely because a lot of our money has gone to health treatments and different things and just not being able to work and stuff. So you guys know how expensive it is to buy that stuff and everything. But when I've done shooting, I've been a decent shot, probably nowhere near what you guys are, but I really, really thoroughly enjoy it. I've just never gotten into it yet. So
We can remedy that. But
I'm down.
So we got some guns up here. We got a good fishing spot, smoker. We got a pond on the range. It's 13-acre pond with some largemouth bass in it. So, man, we could check a lot of boxes.
I would love it. That sounds incredible. And I'll bring some tri-tips as my contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Cool, man. What we've kind of found in our journey with Righteous Savages and what we've been doing the last couple of years is that whenever we finally start to speak up and be like, hey, you know what? I'm Dave Kemp over here. I'm going to let everybody know I'm a born again Christian. This is what I believe in. This is why. This is how I'm trying to act. All of a sudden, a bunch of people in the crowd that would have never seen anything before, like, hey, me too, man. And it's like this snowball that's going on. And I think the same exact thing is going on with your book, Matt, and what you're doing. It's motivating people to be like, Charlie, man, look at this dude that's been going through all this stuff in his life, and he actually has stepped forward and is taking action. And that I want to do. So it's, been very encouraging to me, brother. And we can't wait to see what's next. So you said DNA of a Warrior. Is that the next?
Yeah, that's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. That's likely the next. I think I may have mentioned on the phone with you, there's been a project that started to percolate, like something along the lines of a man's guide to the Gospels, like reading the Gospels through a fresh lens, not the tired church lens, right? But what do we glean from about masculinity in the Gospels that you don't really hear about? So I think that might pass up the DNA of a warrior. But yes, DNA of a warrior and also DNA of a king are both on the docket. But I think this one will be first. My wife and I have also been working on a joint book together. We haven't titled it yet, but it's obviously for marriage, but it's a largely about what are you going to prophesy over your marriage, and what are the different beliefs that you have about your marriage that are actually from hell, that are stealing the life out of your marriage, and instead, what does God say, and how do you begin to partner with what He says so that you begin to speak it and it starts to come into pass because of the fact that your words carry power.
Yeah, I would give you my gut feeling. I think that's the book you ought to do.
All right. Noted.
That one really, that is just, there's so many people on edge just really needing and wanting that type of information and that perspective.
Yeah.
So as your manager, I'm not telling you what to do, but I think that would be really cool.
I think that is definitely a message that's needed, because what we see in culture and everything else in the world is pushing us outside of our natural, where God actually created us to be.
Yeah.
First is that the wife will desire her husband, and that's actually talking about his position, that God made him responsible as a leader in the home.
Yeah.
And that relationship, it's not about being a tyrant or a domineering husband. It's actually about, like, you're responsible. You're going to be held accountable to God for all of the actions you take as in that leadership role in your relationship. And but women have been told a lie about, oh no, be the boss, be the this, be the that. And it's it's actually what the world wants you to think masculinity is what they're trying to make women be right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not actually what God calls us to be as masculinity, but it's the world's definition of it. And we're trying to make women be that.
Yeah.
And then we make men be these passive little, lumps that sit around playing video games and watching sports and and I think those things, as far as a new inoculation to masculinity, those are some of the biggest things that rob you of a real adventure and give you a fake one.
Absolutely.
Destroys. And I used to be big into video games. I used to be big into sports. I don't play them hardly at all. And I try and keep my kids from playing too much of it, because it's easy to get lost in the fakeness of what the world has to offer without seeing the reality of what Christ actually wants us to do. And that adventure is real.
Yeah. That's such a good point, man. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I kind of suck, there's not much that I have to offer the world anyway, then what's the point of trying to find a real adventure? You can live vicariously through the video games or whatever it is and scratch that itch.
Well, side through things, pornography is so easy to access now.
Yeah.
Now it's personalized with stuff like OnlyFans and all of this other stuff that's out in the world. And it's like, it's all just fake. What the world's always going to offer us a counterfeit of what God actually wants for our lives.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that actually makes me think of, back to the question, what's the biggest failure that the church has perpetrated on men? I think it's this notion that all you are is a sinner saved by grace. That's it. Because if that's all I am, then I can't really go get any better than pornography. I just suck. I can't go make anything of myself. And it's wrong for me to even think that I can, because now I'm prideful and arrogant and it's about me now instead of Jesus. Like, that's probably the biggest failure, because it has created a bunch of men who either don't think they have what it takes, or they think it's wrong if they try to get what it takes.
Ooh, that's good, man. That's really good. And I think that's absolutely true, because we've preached this watered down thought of, yeah, it's okay. Just go along with it. Just go with the flow. Don't push yourself. And it's this like Christian shame.
Yeah.
You are a sinner, just saved by grace. You really can't do anything. Instead of, hey, you're a warrior for God. Go out there and fight those battles.
Yeah.
Hey, you're a leader of your home.
Yeah.
Go out, lead well.
Yeah. I think some of the most dynamic men of the Bible, Moses, King David, Paul, like all these people that, thank goodness they just weren't the nice people, the nice Jews sitting around. Hey, we'll pick the nicest people ever to be disciples for Jesus.
Yeah.
There were some pretty messed up bad dudes that were, had some hard lives. Thank goodness they didn't sit back like, "Whoa, Jesus, I don't think you know me very well. I'm just a dirtbag. You need to go find the nice guys." Thank goodness that didn't happen.
You're right. I mean, you look at how Paul talks in the New Testament. He talks like an arrogant guy sometimes, and he doesn't care. And he like, you read the way he communicates about himself. And yeah, there are times when he says, I'll admit I'm the chief of sinners. I did a lot of stuff. But then there's plenty of times where he acknowledges the worth that he has and the value he brings to the churches that he's ministering to. It's very much not the nice guy. It's fascinating. I was actually just taking my group of guys through some stuff about the mighty men, and just like you put yourself in the shoes, I think it was Shammah in the list that's in like one of the Samuels, and it talks about how there was this field of lentils and all of Israel had run, but he stood his ground, right? And he defended it single-handedly. And I and I and I made this point. In our culture, it would be frowned upon if there's a problem out there for one of us to raise our hand and say, "Oh, I can handle it. I know I can totally take care of that. I've got it." It's like, well, no, you don't have it. Jesus has it. You just, you're just along for the ride. You can't take credit for that. But Shammah is like, everyone else, nobody. Okay, I'll be the man for the job. I got this. There was this understanding that I have what it takes, and I bring worth to the table, and I'm not just a scumbag. And that maybe I was, maybe that has been part of my experience, but at my core, God created me to be a king, to be to take dominion over this place, and I'm his son. He doesn't adopt scumbags.
No. And that actually reminded me of another story from the Bible, of Jonathan and his armor bearer.
Oh, love it, man.
One of the most amazing stories, because he had the courage to say, "Hey, if God's with us, we're going to go over there and we're going to fight." Two men. And it talks about when they called them up, he said, "Okay, our signal that God's with us is they're going to call us up to go fight them."
Yeah.
And they go up and they fight. And it says that one swing of their sword and 20 men were laid to waste. That's some like warrior juices flowing, man. That's like, woo! Like, all right, here I am, send me. That's the kind of mentality we should have as men of God. Not this, us sit and fill our pews and do our godly duty to take our family to church every Sunday. No, get out there and fight.
Yeah.
And do the work of God in the days between the times you're sitting in the pews.
Oh, dude, you guys like make my spirit come alive, because I just love where you guys come from with all this stuff. And you're right. It's like, no, we were meant to fight. We just were. And we were meant, honestly, we were meant to pursue reward. I mean, I'm sure you studied the story of David. He went out to fight Goliath after he had asked them to repeat a couple of times, "What's the reward I'm going to get if I kill this giant?" We're meant for glory.
Tell me what I'm going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I wish I don't have it off the top of my head. There's a scripture in Romans that talks about how God is going to honor those who seek glory and a reward. And we're meant to get out there and go gain glory. I mean, Jesus says in John 17, "Father, the glory that you have given me, I'm now giving to them." What?
Well, and that's another big thing in the world today, is we don't have enough godly men pursuing even power.
No, I know.
All of these communities, we should be. Power it can be a dangerous thing in the hands of an evil man. Power can be a great thing in the hands of a godly man. And we see the book of Judges, the book of Kings. You have good kings, you have good judges that stand up for the people. They fight for God and what God wants them to do, and God rewards them. And he didn't change. Just because we're 2,000 or 3,000 years removed from it, our God didn't change that mentality, and
Right.
that's what we pursuing.
Right. That's 100% true. We have made it wrong to want to get rewarded from God. Like the idea of giving. When you give, don't give in order to get. That's what's told a lot. I see Jesus saying, "Hey guys, gather around. I want to tell you something. When you give, don't make a big deal about it. Don't tell everybody about it because you want to know something. That's going to be the extent of your reward. You want to get rewarded? Then when you give, don't tell the whole world about it. Don't try to get the recognition from men, because then your Father who sees in secret is going to reward you openly. He's like motivating us to obey him by rewards. And we have made it wrong for some reason. And it's really sad. It's very sad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Gosh, not to point out how amazing I am or anything, but I want to just the point that you made, getting out there and fighting. If you don't believe that you carry anything of value other than sometimes God uses you, then you're going to sit on the sidelines and let people suffer. We have a dear friend of ours whose mom was just diagnosed with cancer, and very, very gnarly cancer. When I heard about it, because I've walked this road now for a while, I no longer was like, oh, well, I wonder if I should or not. It was like, if I don't offer to come over and pray for this woman who I don't know, I'm actually sinning, because I carry heaven inside of me. I have the answer for this cancer right now. It would be wrong if I sat on my butt and didn't go do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude that I think more of us need to have. And and it's no shame to any men who don't feel this way. There's other things in my life that I'm still working on that with, right? Like that, I'm not all incredible, but if more of us had that attitude, like you said, what would this world look like? Because we'd have a lot of Christian men rulers and women rulers. Like, we'd have Christian men and women both suffer from the same stuff. We'd have Christians in places of power in this world. And I think the landscape would look so different if we were just like, oh yeah, I have the answer.
Yeah, just figure out what realize what your identity is, figure out what your mission is. Everybody's got a gift. Some people it's praying for people to be healed. Other people it's, donating money to a cause. Other people it's teaching. We could talk about all those gifts. The key is actually doing one of those things. Not reading the Bible and be like, yeah, it's great. Everybody's got gifts, and sitting home watching American Ninja Warrior and then we're getting up the next day and doing something else. So, man, it'd be like, a colony of ants. One little bitty ant can't do anything by themselves, but they could carry an elephant away if there's, a million of them. So,
yeah,
that's
right.
I think we are in America, we're on that edge where possibly, if we really want to, of all the Christians in America standing up and actually taking action and doing some things to help their families, their communities, whatever. And it would be absolutely overwhelming. And we're just trying to do our part to help people to stand up, to do whatever they can, to take action just in their families, if nothing else. Because that's a whole battlefield right there, just your living room, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
Have such a big impact that ripples out to your kids and their kids and aunts and uncles and everything else. So,
oh yeah,
I'm about saving the world, putting a cape on and saving the world. Right now, just start somewhere. Start with yourself, your family. Tell other people about it. Don't be afraid to speak up. And good grief, man, we get this train rolling. There won't be stopping it.
Oh man, absolutely, and especially when you look in Scripture and you see the out of this world promises that God makes to his people. It's like he promises victory. He promises that you're going to prosper. You look at Deuteronomy 28, that chapter is incredible of all the promises God has for his people. Like, he promises that he's greater in you than the forces that be in the world. Man, like, if we just step out, like, what are we going to see him do? It's incredible.
Yep. Well, I didn't work. We've got some crazy times we're living in right now, especially in the old US of A, and kind of with politics and just all kinds of stuff. But I'm kind of ready. I'm ready to see craziness. I'm ready. Like, hold on. I mean, what are the, if somebody said this once too. If you knew you wouldn't fail at something, would you try it? Of course you would. Now imagine all the things you would do if you knew. If somebody said you cannot fail, how many things would you try? You'd be trying a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put on a lot of things, a lot of projects, a lot of prayer, a lot of everything. And so instead of having like a to-do list of like, well, there's some things I might need to do. It's like change your to-do list in your Christian life of not like, these are possible things, like write down a list. And instead of, I possibly need to do this, it's, this has to be done right now.
Yeah.
Just you're like your emergency list, have to do list, and get things going, man. So, dude, brother, I'm so excited about talking to you. Obviously, this book has had a big impact on us. We would like to do some more of this and continue these talks and this relationship, man. I think the people in our wheelhouse and kind of who we're reaching out to and who we deal with are also, I've mentioned you to some of the guys in our classes before, and they're like, oh yeah, I've read the book. It's really cool. And we definitely want to keep this thing going as much as we can if you're up to it, man, and get people more involved. So I just want to plug your stuff again. I showed this to the wrong camera earlier, but this DNA of a Man is Man Warrior King is the website, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And so just kind of tell everybody kind of what they might be able to find on that website from you there.
Yeah, so if you head to Man Warrior King, you'll see my podcast is posted there. You're going to see some different coaching options too. I work one-on-one with men. I also have a monthly membership. We meet weekly on Zoom, and some of these guys in that membership have been running with me now for like 3 years, that just faithfully. A lot of transformation happens there. Every so often I'll do 3-month intensives. The last one I did was last spring. It was called The Masculine Husband. So it's guys who are, in the kind of marriages we've been talking about on the show today, just like, I'm done with this. I need something. And so that program takes men through an identity discovery process. It takes them through a confidence building process, a joy finding process. And then what does this look like? What are the nuts and bolts of what I need to change in my marriage now that I've found all these things? So there's all that. If you go to manwarriorking.com/DNA, that's where the book page is. And you can read all about the book and purchase it there. It's also on Amazon as well. And then the podcast is everywhere you can find podcasts. I am hoping to start up my YouTube channel in a better way than I have, but right now I just put podcast episodes on it, like the audio, and there's an image on the background. So I'm wanting to build that out, but you can find me on YouTube. It's just not going to be that impressive yet.
Yeah. We'll definitely shout you out. We're brand new to this thing as well. So we've got Righteous Savages YouTube channel as well. We've got 34,000 subscribers on there at the moment. So we're trying to build that up as big as we can possibly. You can visit us at righteoussavages.com. You'll find there kind of more of the firearms side of what we do as far as training and merchandise and that type of thing. So I would suggest you check us out there. You can also check us out at tombstonerange.com to get some information about some goings on at the range there as well. So John, anything else?
Yes, you guys really believe in the message that Matt is pushing and what we are all about. I would encourage each and every one of you guys to like and follow and subscribe to all of the social medias. Check out his website. Make sure you guys spread the word about what this message is all about, because I think it's probably the most important thing that we're missing in the church as a whole right now. We don't have strong men. We don't have strong leadership. And without strong leadership, things fail. Our country, our community, our churches, it all depends on strong male headship and leadership. And that's what we're all trying to build here. We are super excited where God is leading us and the connections that he's making. I think this is going to be a great one. I think there's a bright future with the three of us joined together with a mission. You have a band of men that have a strong mission. We see what God did with 300 with Gideon, so he can do the same thing with us. So join the brotherhood. because we're simpatico in what we're pushing here. So check us out. Like Dave said, check out our website, all our social medias, and we'll see you guys very, very soon. And before we leave, I'll drop our kind of our slogan, and that is to take Jesus everywhere you go and act like you believe. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Bye.